Ah, wow. There she is. I just see your picture.
There we are.
Hello, hello. Where did that picture come
Hi.
from? Hi, Cheryl. Hi, good to see you. How you feeling? How you feeling?
Oh, much fine. 100%.
Oh, good. Yes, you look vigorous and
Uh,
look.
I I feel good.
Oh, good, good,
Yeah,
good, good, good.
yeah. And I rested all morning and just, for the first time I like watched TV and I have a couple of thoughts about television. Why? I mean, so many commercials are, oh, your hair, it's all gone.
I did promise you a surprise, did I not?
Oh my goodness.
You
Yeah.
see what a long head I have. I don't know if you remember Mad TV, the character Phone Bone. Anyway, my friend used to call me Phone Bone.
Oh my goodness. You look so different.
It'll grow again, I've only got one setting on my clippers. This is the longest, setting, not the shortest, the longest. So, I every now and then I cut it all off. So, actually, I had my hair a little like this or a little longer most of
Yeah.
my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is, it does give you a whole fresh new head of hair.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. So it works for
I,
me.
I found out, remember I mentioned before that I only needed another inch and a half before I could donate mine.
Yeah,
Now I
yeah.
find out because I color it, they won't accept it.
So do you have to stop coloring it before they'll accept it?
Well, it's too late. I mean, my hair is colored.
Yeah, but I mean, if you let it grow out, and it'll take some time, I
This took
imagine.
this took 3 years.
Oh no, but I mean, if you stop coloring, at what point will they accept it?
Well, then it'll all be gray, and I don't think they accept gray hair either.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
there you go. Oh well. I think it
yeah,
would have made a nice wig, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of you got nice thick hair. It's very nice. Yeah.
but so maybe I'll just let it keep growing. Who knows?
Yeah, the main reason I actually cut it, I do like the long hair, I enjoy it, but now in the summer, when I sleep, the hair it touches me, and it
Yeah,
wakes me up.
yeah, yeah. I have
Yeah,
to I have to put mine all up on top when I sleep.
yeah.
I
So
can't stand it when it touches my back.
right, exactly, or my shoulders, like right here on the collarbones, very sensitive for me.
Yeah,
And same, yeah, on the eyes too. It's amazing how sensitive that is. So that wakes me up all the time. So anyway, yeah,
so there you go. Now you'll sleep better, and that's important.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You see how fat my face is now too.
Oh, stop! It is not.
Well, I don't mind, but it is.
I've got my mother's waddle.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Google. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah. It's all good. I don't care with stuff. So that's
I
the other thing.
always
Yeah,
I've
truly.
always said if you pass me by the cover of my book, you're
Yeah.
missing a good read.
Exactly, 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 exactly. It's so funny, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but actually in today's world, with the science of book covers, you can actually judge books by their cover.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Many
I mean,
people
if they've
do.
done a professional cover, there are a lot of cues and clues to give you an idea of what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
Mills and Boone romance novels have a very different cover to, literary fiction, so it just makes a difference. Yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, they say people eat with their eyes, and they definitely select a book with their eyes. The cover of that book is like
Yeah.
what first draws you because you go to a bookstore, Barnes
Yes.
and Noble, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. Every time, and I've got to make my annual trip because I want something good to read for my vacation. I need a good beach read.
Yeah. What
But
what kind of stuff do you like to read, Cheryl? I can maybe give you some recommendations. I've read a lot in my life.
um, I like historical dramas. I
Ah.
read one. I read one time. It was factual based, but it was fictional.
Ah.
Um, about about when the communists overthrew China.
Ah.
And it was
Yeah.
one family's
Yeah.
perspective of it.
Yeah.
And I remember really enjoying that book. And then I read the book about the geisha, and I really
Yeah,
enjoyed that too. I mean, just like I like historical, I like it
yeah.
fact based but fictional.
Historical dramas, yeah. Typically, they throw, they make it realistic. They do their research, but yeah, I like them too. There's a Bernard Cornwell. They made a TV series out of it about a time just in England's history when it was uniting still to become England. In those early days. And with the Vikings, the Danes. The Vikings are raiders, but Danes, Viking is a particular term. But anyway, so the Danes came and tried to settle there, and all the drama that was involved with that. It's kind of a longish series, but I like series because they're more
Yeah.
involved and they go to their depths.
Oh,
So
they got yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, and
so
I
check it
just
out.
read oh, what did I just read? Oh, The Tattoo Artist. It was
That
about the
come to
gentleman in
me.
the Holocaust that put the numbers on the Jews when they
Yeah,
came in,
yeah, yeah,
and it was his like life story
yeah.
throughout the Holocaust and so forth. That was
Wow.
very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. If you want to read all about the horrors of the Holocaust experiments and all that, it's really interesting. It's a book by Leon Uris. He's kind of a good author too, and his stuff has a historical basis to it as well, more modern. Um, so yeah, and that book's called QB7. Queen's Bench 7. Yeah, it's about the trial of the guys who did the experiments and stuff. So it's very interesting. But he's written
okay,
most of his novels are more modern history. You know that he wrote another one like about the Jews on the ship when they tried to come to America. I forget what's called, and then now they got returned and went back to Israel and all that. So
oh,
yeah.
okay.
But yeah, it's very interesting. So just and I'm trying to remember what that novel is called. I think it's his kind of main one, but it's all about the start of Israel as a state. How they settled there. I mean, because the Jews that came out of Germany, they didn't at first try to go there. They tried to come here to America, but then the ship came and they were refused. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
had known that. Yeah. Oh, they
but
sat in the
also,
New York Harbor for
yeah.
weeks, basically, right?
Right. It's just,
Yeah,
anti-Semitism. They don't want to take them in. I mean, even today, America's kind of low on the list when it comes to accepting refugees. Very
yeah,
low on the list. We
yeah,
terrible. Just terrible. Yeah. People complain. They criticize a lot of the European countries, but like Germany, you got to see how many immigrants they take. It's unbelievable.
yeah. Right,
It's
right,
quite
right.
amazing. Quite amazing. Uh, thing with settling Europe. If you do read that book, I wish I remember what it's called. I'll tell you in a moment what it's called.
Um, that's the Bernard Cornwall.
No. The Bernard Cornwell one is about England in the medieval times.
Oh, okay.
That I'd recommend first. I'll tell you. I'll tell you now what that series is called. I mean, the main character is quite a wild guy. Um, because he's a Dane, but he's grows up. He's an English guy. He's got the heritage, but he grows up. He's adopted by a Viking guy. So even though he's born and bred, and he's from a minor lord, he grows up as a Dane. So he has this conflicting loyalty. The first one is called The Last Kingdom, and the series is called The Saxon Stories.
It's called The Last. I'm sorry, it
The,
went
the
away.
Last Kingdom. The Last
Kingdom.
Kingdom. Yeah. It's really detailed. You really get an idea of that time, and what's going on, and there's good drama in it and good character study because the king is they're complex characters, and there's nuance and subtlety, and
Well,
this
I
is
like that.
writing.
I
Yeah,
like when there's more
yeah,
to it. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more to it. I mean, it's really fantastic. One of the better series that I've read. So there's a couple in it, in the series, which is nice. So the series is called The Saxon Stories. And it's a great TV series on it too. They did it fantastic justice. Really well done, the TV series. But I'd recommend reading the books first or listening to them. I listen on audiobook,
Yeah.
uh, because then I can do other stuff, which I
Yeah.
like, So
Yeah.
very, very, and especially if you get a headset, a Bluetooth headset that you can listen on. This is too
I have
fantastic.
one. I have one.
And
But
then, like you're doing housework, you're cooking or whatever. I'm doing. I'm not just cooking. I'm listening to my story. So
yeah,
I
that's
love
true.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love using my time productively, and you end up reading a lot more than you would otherwise do.
Yeah.
So, um, boy, I'll
Well,
have to look through my books, but that's a good start. Let me look up Leon Uris if you like the more modern history stuff. I'll tell you that book now. That's called. They also made a movie out of it. Exodus. It's called. That's it. Exodus.
okay.
That again, and he's got a little bit of a bias. He is Jewish himself, but still, it gives you a good perspective on it. So, just for a little bit of context here, right? A
Okay.
lot of people just I always like to look at things from all the sides involved. So
Right. Right.
yeah, so when I was a kid, I was 9 years old, right, and we just moved, and my father partnered with a Jewish doctor, and in those days, the general that's what they called it. A place to consulting rooms at their houses, which was very well, not all of them, but it was a common practice anyway. So he was this doctor, and they had, you know, so the houses were next door because he had a after-hour surgery. Anyway, long story. So anyway, because the houses were connected and we had some back and forth. They didn't have kids my age, but they had my brother and my sister's age. And anyway, so every now and then I'd be across there at the house. So one day there's something on the radio because this is before TV stuff. He's listening to a speech by Menachem Begin, and he says that I don't know. He cursed the guy, that shit or something. I forget what he said. But basically, he was a bit annoyed because I think Menachem Begin was getting a Nobel Prize or something of that kind. Something going on with Menachem Begin. He says, "Yeah, I remember we used to, this guy." And so he said, but he was kind of talking to himself. He didn't know. He says, "I can't remember his exact words. I wrote it down somewhere. I wrote a story about it, but once I write it, I forget." But he said, "Yeah, I remember when we used to string up the Palestinians. When we used to hang them upside down from the eucalyptus trees."
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's what he said. Not string them up. He said, "Yeah, I remember the two of us. How we used to hang the Palestinians upside down from the eucalyptus trees."
Wow. Yeah.
So I don't think AB Levinson, that was his name, by the way. I still remember his name. Yeah, a very potent wife too. His wife's name was Beulah. She kind of ruled the house. He was kind of a big fat slobby guy, and she would always say, "Oh, AB." It was kind of a joke, but anyway, don't think he didn't know that I heard him, but this was very, very revealing for me at the time. First of all, say, "Wow, AB, you're kind of a fat slob now, but back in the day, you did stuff.
Yeah.
you weren't just you actually were doing stuff." But also, it showed me what kind of a person AB was,
Yeah.
because he specifically said we used to hang them upside down. And he said the eucalyptus trees, which is that little bit of detail which makes it more realistic. Because
Mhm.
eucalyptus trees are very tall and you can see. Now, what's the point of hanging people upside down?
And to make them suffer, right?
It's terror. Yeah, not
Yeah.
just for them, but for everybody else, especially when you hang them high up, right?
Yeah.
This is pure terror. So
Yeah.
these are the Israeli guys engaging in real terrorist tactics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think this is mentioned in Leon Uris's book.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'm just saying, and we have a very sanitized view of
Yeah.
Israel and the conquest of Israel. A lot of people don't. I think it is mentioned in the book, though, about where they would relocate. They would settle Jewish settlers, and they would, in a town, and they would bring in a lot of people, and then change the voting of like the city council, and
Yeah.
that's the way they got power and control. Right? They
Right.
manipulated things, and
Yeah.
essentially they stole Israel from the Palestinians.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's like in reading the tattoo artist, um, he got lots of preferential treatment in the
yeah,
camp,
yeah,
and he kind of. It's almost like the book is being read from his point of view, and he talks about how he shared his food with the hungry children and so forth. And then I asked myself, yeah, but did you ever go hungry for the kids?
yeah.
You know, okay, yeah, you gave them a piece of bread. That's probably what you had left after you ate.
There's
So
a
there
lot of
was
good stories.
there's a
Yeah,
there was just another perspective. I can't imagine that every prisoner in that camp looked to him as some sort of hero.
survivor stories from the concentration camps are quite profound,
Yeah,
because you can't just read one. You have
yeah,
to read many or listen to many, because one person, we tend to assume that their story is representative of people in the camp. It's not. I've
yeah.
heard the entire gamut of survivor stories, and quite a few times I've heard people say, "Oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me,"
Mm,
and like the interviewer was like, "What?" I say, "Yeah, that was the best thing that ever happened to me."
yeah,
It woke them up. It galvanized them. It made them realize what's important, etc., etc. It
right.
made them into people, into where they were ghosts before, they were shadows before. So
Yeah,
this is very powerful. It's very powerful.
yeah,
But these stories are good stories. I read them when I was a kid at school. I would assume they're still good. But still, they are a lot of research, a lot of depth go into them, and they're exciting too. There's a lot of drama involved.
yeah.
So that one, Exodus and QB7, I don't know why those are coming up just you talked about. But there's others too, like they're all good. I don't know. I enjoyed them all. I thought they were great. I
Okay.
just wanted to mention, at the time when I heard that AB say, oh yeah, we used to string up I'm sorry, hang the Palestinians upside down from the eucalyptus trees. That really made me say, wow, you just revealed yourself to be a big shit, and it's like, that's not a nice thing to do. And there's no point to it other than terror.
Right, right.
It's powerful when implications, in other words, when we learn to listen to implications.
Mm,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Fascinating. I just, by the way, on Israel, I see Israel just, if they continue the way they're on, there's no reason to think they'll change. They have lots of reason to change, but they don't. I mean, essentially, they're running the world's largest concentration camp right now. They have been for years, right? But what I'm sort of predicting is at some point the whole thing will implode on them. At some point, some American president is going to say, "I want peace in the Middle East," and the way to get it is to sell out Israel, and to just say, look, Israel, what you guys do is not right. Here you've got this concentration camp. Sorry, if you want peace, stop doing your nonsense. And if Israel refuses, they withdraw support, and then the whole thing implodes. And
right.
any president who basically sides with the unfairness of that situation is going to get massive support in the Arab world, and will be able to do incredible things.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, and my son and I were discussing this the one day because Hoda, who is Ali's mother, did something very interesting in a restaurant. They were sitting in a restaurant, the three of them, having a brunch. A really nice restaurant, white tablecloth, the whole bit. And Hoda says, that man over there, he is UAE. And Justin was like, oh, okay. She goes, you watch him when we leave. He will know I am from Lebanon. And then she walked by their table as they were leaving and said something in this French Lebanese language to Eli that was something sharp. Justin doesn't know the language, but Ali went, Mom, like that, like, doll. And they got outside and she said, Did you see his face? He knows I am from Lebanon. I
Yeah.
mean, and my son said, I said, well, aren't aren't they both like considered like Arab countries? No.
No, it's all mixed up in there.
He said, Mom, like the Jordanians don't like the Saudis, and the Saudis don't like the Lebanese, and the
Oh, right.
Lebanese don't like the UAEs. And he said they're all like infighting.
And it's worse than that because it's not just go by country. It's also the religious schisms. You know,
Yeah.
like so especially with the Saudis. I mean, they really push Wahhabism, which is a very radical form of Islam. I mean, you talk to Bina, and boy, she absolutely detests that Wahhabism because it's just horrible. It's very extreme. So yeah, there's a lot of division, but nonetheless, they will more or less, have some common cause with stuff when it comes to getting people to perceive.
I guess they dislike each other, but they all hate Israel, right?
I don't know if they all hate Israel all as much as people like to push it out to be. It's very convenient for Israel to push this. I don't know if that's always true or not, because money talks too. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
when it comes to business. There was a whole thing where they all did stuff together, and some of them were got into it with Israel. But I'm saying, Israel itself causes a lot of their own problems. I mean,
Yeah.
they as extreme as some of those countries too. And the way they treat the Palestinians, I mean, I always thought of this long back. It's not that and one has to be careful. This is what annoys me. You can't say anything against Israel because then you're anti-Semitic. But boy,
Yeah.
you speak to some Israelis, and then you'll hear a different story. There's a lot of them that absolutely detest this hardlinism of, which is right wingers in Israel. They cause a lot of trouble. Anyway, Israel itself is very divided. They don't even have two parties. They have like half a dozen that are typically revolving in and out and all over the show.
Mm.
But it struck me, when you hear the stories of like Palestinians bombing rockets, and then how the Israelis respond. Now, I mean, typically you're hearing a propaganda report, how they come and they bomb the places where the rockets were fired from, and the whole apartment building gets ruined. And now lately the Israelis have started sending, they'll send a warning to everybody in the building, get out, rocket attack coming. But nonetheless, I thought, how extreme must things be, right? For me, if I were a guy to fire a rocket knowing what is the likely result, knowing
Yeah.
it's pretty useless, but you try anyway. You have to be pretty desperate to do that. And that
Yeah.
really made me think, this was a long time ago when I first heard this. Again, it's like implications. Don't just buy what people tell you. Think about what they're saying. So yeah, they're making a big point of, it was a kind of a propaganda thing in a sense. Look how powerful we are, and our enemies can't touch us, blah blah. But it made me really think that, boy, these poor suckers, what are they? What's in it for them? Why would they go to such extreme lengths? And
Mm.
that's kind of a little bit of a different perspective on things. So yeah, it's just
Mm.
interesting, that there's always more than one side to a story. That, but still, and then when you combine it with the whole thing, Israel doesn't play nice. And I saw this in South Africa. Israel and South Africa did a lot of military organization stuff together because they kind of have the same mentality, really. It's very racist. It's very, 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 very racist.
Mm.
This is quite sad, but what
It
can
is
you do?
sad. It is sad.
It's very
It is
sad.
sad. It's sad how little improvement we've made in the last
Exactly. And you would
1,000
think,
years.
exactly, exactly. I mean, you think the one place in the world where you would not have any kind of discrimination, really, of any kind, would be Israel. But
Right.
but
You would think they know, right? what that
it's
leads to.
it's constitutionally enshrined their racism.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's a Jewish state, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just intriguing to me. It's just intriguing to me. I when I grew up, I thought the Israelis were the be all and end all of everything. I really admired them and their spirit and their challenge. But when you hear a little bit more, you also see basically just like the same way in South Africa. How they push the propaganda and the image. So I mean, they like in the occupied territories, they don't allow journalists and stuff in there. The
Mm.
stuff's coming out now, but it still gets suppressed very much. The awful truth. So I don't know. I like to look at it from a perspective point of view and perception. I don't mean to sort of pick sides or say anything. Just that when one really starts to pay attention, you see more, and then you hear
Mm.
the things in between. It's very powerful. Very, very.
Mm.
Now, the Palestinians are their own worst freaking enemies too when it comes to the nonsense that they get up to. That's why I'm saying I do feel at some point, well, particularly with Palestine, all it takes for them to click is to say, hey, you know what? Those guys that got I don't know, the horned spotted toad protected area claimed, where they had to. You hear about this all the time, where some wildlife thing has to be preserved and, they have to divert the highways and whatever. That that lobby that lobby part of in the lobbyists that lobby for wildlife preservation, they're incredibly successful and very powerful. If I were the Palestinians, I'd freaking hire those lobbyists to push my case,
Mm.
right? Instead of using military force. But that's it. Your terrorism isn't working. It's like, come on, seriously, wake up now. If you want to
Yeah.
really get success, try some other methods. The
Yeah.
most successful freedom fighter in all of history, you know who that is?
The most successful freedom fighter?
Freedom fighter, yes, by far,
No, I have no idea.
Gandhi.
Oh, Gandhi.
Yeah, see, nobody thinks of him as a freedom fighter, but he was, right? He was a freedom fighter, but he freed the most people with the least amount of violence possible, right? Least
That's true. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, seriously, dudes, if you don't look at somebody who's getting results, he had the most successful results. Copy his
Right.
methods. I mean, all your violence, blowing people up, all this. What does it achieve? It's
Yeah.
feel good. I'm tough. I'm striking
Who's
down
the
big
best
men.
bomber is a game that nobody wins.
Exactly. And you
Yeah.
don't. And who succeeded with this? It doesn't really work. So whenever you look at these things, that at some point it's the negotiations and a political process that solves it. So yeah, you can irritate people into giving you change, but it's the truth of the matter that succeeds in the end, not your violence. So, but Nelson Mandela, same thing. He always pushed violence, but I remember very clearly at the time I was really paying attention. The thing that started it was business. It was actually the CEO, or at that time they called him managing director of Barclays, an English South African bank, who made it. He said, "Look, all this nonsense of suppressing the violence, and you have to start talking to these people." And he opened up negotiations and started talking to the ANC, and then things started to change. And then at that time it wasn't the prime minister who got the Nobel Prize with Mandela. People forget about him. F.W. de Klerk. He then took that ball that this guy started and he rolled it. And he said to Mandela, before all the guys, the prime ministers before, they were willing to let Mandela out of jail if he would renounce violence, and he refused. He was a knucklehead back in that time. He became a statesman, Mandela. He changed quite dramatically, but he was a dickhead when he was in that state.
Ticket.
Oh, he was terrible, and he was just a fool, really. He was very blinkered. Anyway, he definitely changed a lot. He became a really good statesman. I admire him for his change, but he said a lot of stupid things, and he was very silly. So he refused to renounce violence as a means to political end, and he should know better. He was acutely aware of Gandhi. So he's a lawyer
Interesting.
too. Yeah, Mandela. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, and he said stupid things like he was going to nationalize all the banks when they came into power. oh my God, the world just about had a heart attack, and all his support just vanished. And so he had to withdraw that, and they had to set up a big conference, and he had to backpedal, and so it was full of immersion bubble mindset.
Mm,
And then he wised up, and he kind of started seeing overview perspective, and he changed. So that's
mm,
very rare to see somebody come through that. Typically they
yeah,
kind of stick to their knowledge, but he really transformed. Yeah. So
yeah.
he was, like I said, he was just dreadful. Not because of propaganda, but direct things that he said and did, like not renouncing violence. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal,
Mm.
because that's the thing that really made the difference for the negotiations.
But I mean, what was his motivation for change?
For changing to become a statesman.
Yeah, becoming a good guy.
Well, I
From being
think
a
that
dickhead to a good guy. I mean, really, was it ego based,
no,
or
no,
did he
I think
just really have a epiphany?
I don't know if it's so much of an epiphany. I think the pressure on him that he was put on him, in terms of people idolizing him and saying you're so wonderful and all this, he had to kind of started to live up to it. So,
Oh, okay.
initially, he's taking on the status, but he couldn't sell it as a lie. So his honesty won out in the end.
Okay. Okay.
So it's pretty
Got it.
cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
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 So awareness won out, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also his willingness to acknowledge his mistakes, which, like when he said that thing about nationalizing the banks, that was a turning point. From then, he started to kind of grow up and wise up. And I saw gradually how he became better and better and more. So that was a big deal. And it was very early on in the day. I mean, he was still kind of, politically a bit wild after that. And I think his wife may have contributed to it as well, his first wife. She was basically a gangster. She was dreadful. I mean, she had people beaten up and killed, and she had a whole big court case, and they got divorced. And I can't remember what her name is now, but I mean, she was just dreadful. And I
I
think,
can visualize her. I remember pictures of her.
yeah. I mean, she has kind of a unique name to it as well. But anyway, so she caused a lot of trouble, and he had to distance himself from her, and that was a big deal because loyalty and sticking with things, and and she connected to the gangster side of terrorism, because always when you have terror, there's all that gangster, the criminal people who just like to blow up stuff and like chaos and mayhem. And she stayed connected to that, and he, in order to survive politically, especially to maintain the international connections, he had massive international support, which he nearly lost when he said about nationalizing the banks.
Mm,
They turned against him big time, and he would have lost all that if he hadn't backpedaled. So him in that changing and acknowledging mistakes, and also to see when you follow the stuff that's right and true, it works for you in the longer run. The
mm,
same with his wife, that separation and moving away.
mm,
So yeah, he just integrity and honesty in the long run. I could see clearly where he was in an immersion bubble, and he sort of bought into the stuff. All that you gotta kill and bomb and all the stuff. And doing stuff because it was like him ending up in jail. There was no real need for him to end up in jail. He could have avoided it. But it was like
mm.
that like it's a cool thing to do, almost like a martyrdom type of a mindset.
Yeah.
So very interesting. But also the other thing that helped him a lot was his experience in jail.
I imagine.
I think he writes about this. He had a particular guard who's a very typical Afrikaner, very representative of the guys in power. But this guy treated him like a human being, and they became really good friends. And
Mm,
essentially, when he was in jail, he realized that he couldn't hate the people that he was fighting against.
mm.
He got to see the character of his enemy. Now, yes, there are racist dickheads in South Africa, but it's the same as America. Imagine if you had, basically you saw like where Trump came into power, but you saw his attempts at grabbing power and manipulating it. Now, what if he succeeded?
Yeah. I
And
don't
what if
know.
he succeeded and you've got 20, 30, 40 years of this crap?
Mm,
You see?
yeah.
Now, would him and his cronies, because now that's how the nationalists in South Africa, got into power through gerrymandering, minority voting. They were
Well,
minority, and then they controlled all the media and through the churches, which had a lot of power through the church. The church is very predominant there. They pushed a lot of incredible propaganda in the schools. Even, I mean, I remember reading. We were taught political stuff that they were going to do, not had done in history class. It was like unbelievable.
hmm,
Yeah, I mean, even as a kid, I thought like, but this is like your political stuff. This is not history. You're saying what you're going to do. Your plans for the
right.
future. You taught in history class. I mean, talk about prepping your people. But I'm just saying,
Yeah,
it's very distorted. But the humanity of the average white South African, that was a whole different deal. They weren't racist in general, not at all. They were separatists, yes, which like the Amish. The Amish are the Amish racist or they are separatists. It's got to be left alone. That was really the underlying characteristic. And, also uh, when just so Mandela got to see the character of the people, through this God. And, when he was on trial, there's a famous photo of him in trial with a few, the rest of there were like 7 of them that were on trial at the same time. One of them is a whitey.
hmm,
People forget this, they forget this. It's always a black and white thing, but they forget this. So, a very important point, just to end the story too, that also forced Mandela to change, because it wasn't a black white thing, and also the racism wasn't like it is here, right? The racism was there based on naivety, the same kind of naivety that the Amish have. Basically, the South African mentality, and during all the time before that, was an Amish mindset. Very same, right? Leave me alone, leave me alone. I've got a part in the young man stories, a whole section on the history of South Africa and these poor guys who tried to just be on their own, and they got screwed over time and time again. The universe tried to tell them, hey, you cannot live in isolation, not going to happen. I mean, it's just quite an incredible story. but
hmm.
but the end result of this, right? All the stuff, the drama. The only time that I've known this to happen in history ever, for a minority to vote, to legally hand over to a power to a majority, is in South Africa,
Say
right?
that again. Say that again.
Let me say it from a different direction. So when F.W. de Klerk, the guy who got the Nobel Prize with Mandela, people they always forget this, right? The two of them got it together. He let Mandela out of jail and said, "Look, we're just going to talk. We're going to discuss." And F.W. de Klerk, in essence, orchestrated the handover of power from the white minority to the non-white majority, right? Because it's not a black majority; it's a non-white majority. There are other ethnic groups involved as well, like Indians. They're quite sizable. They're not as big as the and black isn't black in South Africa. You got
Oh.
Zulu and Tswana and
But
Xhosa
it
and
was
Hutu
basically
and
white against everybody.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but still, the whites were in power, and so F.W. de Klerk insisted that power be handed over legally. Right, this was a big sticking point for him. So he held a referendum, and he put the case to the country. Now, by that time, people got a little bit clued in, and they woke up and they said, "Look, there's a reality." Before the Nationalist Party had this whole policy of homelands, and we're gonna, essentially like reservations, but the numbers are the opposite, like in America. If you invert, Native Americans to be the majority and the whites to be the same percentage as then you'll see the ratio, right? So it's not feasible. It's feasible because the Native Americans became very small here, very small numbers, so it's no big deal. But imagine if it had been the reverse. Plus, there was this problem of people that weren't born on the reservation that grew up, 2, 3 generations, like the mining, all the people that came from the homelands, and they were from the mines. So, but these are South Africans, they grown up here. They don't have a home to go to. You can't send them back. It's like the people who say to second or third generation people, go back home. Say, I grew up here. This is my home, for crikey's sake. You also came from somewhere. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
So anyway, so F.W. de Klerk held a referendum to say, we're going to do this transfer. And the majority of white South Africans voted to hand over power to a majority, non-white majority.
Hmm.
Only time that I know of in history that this has ever occurred. Now,
Right.
just think of this in the American context a little bit. In 1966, right, when the blacks got the vote, which most Americans, they forget this, 1966 only, right?
Well, yeah.
Very late in the day, but anyway, in
I was
1966,
4 years old already. Yeah.
yeah, 1966 when the blacks got the vote, which you would think from the time of independence, how come they didn't have the vote then? All men are equal, right? Supposed to be in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Where was the equality? But anyway, so now imagine in 1966, if the white Americans were 10%, because that's what they were more or less, 10% of the population. Do you think they would have given the blacks the vote then?
Mm-mm.
Hell no, no way,
Mm-mm.
no way.
No.
So, but that's what happened in South Africa, you know. I mean, yes, they wrote a big constitution for protection for minorities because, even in the blacks, there's no majority. There's not one black thing. South Africa has, I think, like 11 national languages.
Oh, wow. 11.
I think it's
Wow.
11, either 9 or 11. Yeah, it's quite amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
Because the
Well,
the
that's quite
tribal
tolerant. I mean,
say,
think of Americans with the whole
exactly.
English thing, speak English. To have 11 accepted languages is quite tolerant, actually.
You can imagine the situation in like if the Native Americans had maintained the majority, right? And so,
Yeah,
okay, you've got your colonialists, and they 10% of the population. They end up ruling, and at some point they say, look, we've got to incorporate everything and include the Native Americans and make them part of this, right? At that point, right, if you had 10% Europeans speaking English and Native Americans, you probably would have ended up with like 11 different national languages too, if not more. So
sure.
similar situation. Yeah, well, it
Okay.
would have
Yeah.
been, except in America, the population ratios, because of the genocidalness of a lot of the wiping people out and all the diseases and stuff, it
Yeah.
changed. That didn't happen in South Africa with the diseases, for
Mm.
whatever reason. It wasn't as, because I guess Africa is still connected to Europe.
Hmm.
So you had the immunity. It was an immunity thing, just because of the isolation, I suppose.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just fascinating. So I'm answering your question as to why Mandela changed. I think that the reality, for instance, the reality of the people that were supposed to be your enemy were just ignorant for the most part, just good people, inappropriate application of goodness.
Mm.
Absolutely applied in South Africa. Yes, like in any society, there are people that are racist, and sadly, some people grew up racist. But the basic character of the white South Africans that were maintaining these people in power were like Amish who were being duped by people, being manipulated. The same with Trump, and the Trumpers. There's a lot of really good people who just buy Trump's bullshit because, well, he's in power, he's in authority. Now, in America, the situation isn't quite as severe as it was in South Africa.
Mhm.
There, they work through the church, right? And I mean, you getting politics preached in the church. So it's like, wow, how do you go against the church? But
Mm.
people did eventually. They opted to do the right thing. It's fascinating,
Right.
really fascinating. It's quite something. It really is quite something. And I think that through his experience in prison, where he wasn't discriminated against, he was treated very well in prison. He
Yeah.
changed. He changed. He couldn't hold hatred. Basically, he just could not justify it.
Mm.
He didn't always push this in public, uh, directly, because he would get backlash from his supporters. But still, it was quite profound. So yeah, it's a good study of somebody changing from being, like I said, a dickhead. He was not a cool guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, when you grow up with hate and unfairness, and you're getting people who distort stuff, I mean, the guys that were in power, and especially the police, how they treated non-whites, terrible. Yeah, worse
My
than
my
here.
uh my mother was a terrible racist. She was terrible.
Yeah, you said, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My father grew up in what during his lifetime became a predominantly black neighborhood.
Oh,
Started out to
interesting,
Yeah, it
interesting.
started out we call it the South Side of Easton, and the South Side of Easton started out to be very Roman Catholic, lots of Italians,
Yeah.
and as that generation started dying off, and the home values were not that great, and the the lower income, which were the Black community, were moving in. So my father actually had quite a few buddies that, when we'd go downtown on a Saturday afternoon, various Black men, hey, Freddie, how you doing? And
Yeah.
yeah, he had lots of buddies, downtown or in the circle and stuff. Whereas Vivian, oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. That community is
she'd
very
give a Black
racist,
man a glass of
unfortunately.
water, but she'd throw away the glass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's terrible. And there were some people in South Africa like that too. But it's a learned behavior. It's really sad.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very sad.
Well, I didn't learn it. I was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Did
Good for you.
I tell you the story about the guy pushing the wheelchair?
No.
Went to see her when she was in the hospital. This was towards the end, and she was having one of her bounce back moments where she was feeling really big and bold and powerful. She'd put makeup on and get all dressed, and they'd call somebody from transportation to take her for a ride in a wheelchair. So,
I see what's coming. I see what's coming. But anyway,
so I go to visit her, and
Yeah.
here she is coming down the hallway, being pushed by this Black man, young
Yeah.
guy. And I said, well, Mom, look at you going for a ride, all dressed up. And she says, well, this is my helper. This is Aaron. And I said, oh, hi, Aaron. And she leans over and she goes, he's colored.
Like you can't see.
I said, really, Mom? What color is he? She goes, he's Black. I said, oh, thanks for pointing that out to me, Mom. And I said, Aaron, I'm sorry. I apologized to him. I said, it's embarrassing. She does shit like this all the time.
Yeah.
Mom, get with it.
That's amazing that she would say that. I suspect her purpose there is to embarrass you.
I don't know. She's kind of a nut that way. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it makes no sense to point that out.
He's colored, she went.
Yeah.
I think she was trying to say to me, look how nice I'm being to a Black guy.
Yeah, that too. That was also in there. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too fascinating.
It's a piece of work. Yeah.
And also, to call him colored and not black. It's
Oh yeah, she knew every time she used that term, it pissed me off. I corrected her time and time again.
But they say
Mom, that's not what we say.
Right, but it's the hypocrisy to it. To use that term, it's you trying to sort of dumb down or trying to make your racism a bit more acceptable.
Yeah, yeah,
To ameliorate it, in other words.
yeah. She would have been a hell of a case study for you. She was very complicated.
I grew up with people like her. Again, not the majority. The majority of people that I knew were basically just Amish. In their mindset. Ignorant, um, um, and self-important. Sorry,
Yeah.
you think the Amish are very humble? No, they're not, because when you put on that uniform, you are saying, "Look how pious I am. Look how good I am. Look how sacrificing I am." It's all self-importance. So
Yeah, true.
we had a
I
lot of
never
that.
saw that, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
so a lot of that is, you've got to you can't do things because of lack of approval, and what will the community think, and you can't go against God. It's all approval based, in a roundabout way. So it's very subtle, but it's that inverse humility, and you have to be very careful of that. It's very dangerous.
Well,
Quite
listen,
fascinating.
I want to talk to you about one other thing.
Oh yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
got to
yeah.
run off to work, but I want to talk to you about this, and I don't know how you're going to feel about it.
You
But
what?
I don't know how. I want to talk to you about something, but I don't know how you're going to feel about it. So
Well,
I got to finally, I touched base with Gwen.
you can talk to me about anything.
Okay. So I finally touched base with Gwen.
Oh, good.
Like, because we keep playing phone tag and she's not available. She's a very, very busy girl. I know she's interested in the program, but she needs to free up a little time first. I only get to talk to her once a month.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
But I don't know
That's
how
probably problem number one right there.
yeah,
Of all her problems is that she's overloaded. And
yeah.
this is very common, that overwhelm. Anyway, keep going, sir.
Okay. So anyway, we kind of got on the subject. She said something about Jesus, her savior, or something. I don't know. And I said, yeah, Gwen, I don't get it, but I respect it. I don't get it. What don't you get, Cheryl? You were a good Catholic, she said. I said, I mean, I was raised Catholic. And I said, Gwen, I don't know if you noticed, but I was a good everything I was told to be.
Yeah.
But I said, look, you know what? I don't know anymore. I don't know. And I'm certainly not dropping to my knees if I'm unsure. And she said, God's been so good to you, Cheryl. And I said, well, I don't know. All in the course of 5 years, let's see. My father died. Then my uncle died. Then my grandmother died. Then my other grandmother died. Then my grandfather, who was like a father to me, died. Then my mother died. And then my sister died. And oh yeah, then he came around and took my fucking dog.
Yeah.
What's left? She goes, Justin's left. I said, oh, what's that? And I said it, leverage.
Yeah. Oh,
and I said, you see what I did there?
Yeah.
I finally found an application for leverage.
I love it. I love it.
I said, oh, yeah, what's that? Leverage? And as soon as the word came out of my mouth, I was like, I got to tell Sil.
Wow.
I found an application for leverage.
Yes. There you go.
And I mean, and I don't know if I'm right, wrong, or indifferent, but if there is a God up there, if his son's name is Jesus and he's a great looking guy with blue eyes, they're just gonna have to put me on pause for a little bit and until I decide where I'm going with this. I don't know. I'm pretty pissed off.
Yeah. I think, the big issue is to understand that belief is belief and not to confuse belief with fact. Now, just because a belief may not be factual doesn't mean that we cannot believe it, or that a belief might be very improbable doesn't mean we can't believe it either, right? I have absolutely nothing to base my belief in an afterlife on. Zero. By way of facts, right?
Yeah.
I don't have one actual real fact I can point to prove the existence of an afterlife.
Yeah.
There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but it won't fly in a court case, right? So, but this is a belief that I find excessively valuable to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's useful. So when we start to understand the difference between belief and fact, and also do not confuse and conflate the two, and furthermore to understand that we can believe even when we know for a fact it's not factual, still valuable, right? So when we start to choose our beliefs. Now, this has actually come up as two very, very powerful power terms: choosing to believe and having to believe, right? Choosing to believe and having to believe.
I don't know. I mean, I think with Gwen, it's both.
Right, exactly. So, this is what the magic of what we're doing with Way of Impeccability. It's that we are dealing with self-evident sensibilities, and we can find a toolbox, a set of stuff that we can use that enables us to transcend belief, right? To bypass belief, so that our life, the stuff we live by, is not belief based.
Right.
But they're self-evident sensibilities.
Right. Hi, Erica.
Yippee, 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 yippee. So this is powerful. So yes. So what did you want to say about Gwen before we get on to Erica? Hello, Erica.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, what I wanted to tell you about Gwen was just that, just our conversation and that,
Oh, all right.
I just
Sure.
wanted to, because we talked about leverage the whole time last session, and
So
even though I think our conversations, let's say,
you tell Gwen
unresolved.
that to do something that she does this to make the time, and yes, we can do it. We don't have to do 2 hours. 2 hours. We can do two
Yeah,
one
maybe she can
hour.
set up something else. Yeah, that would be great.
But
I
making
will,
the time will force her to reevaluate all of everything in her life, and that would be a major step right there. So
yeah,
I am keen to do this with her, just because of you.
yeah,
But yeah, it would be great. That'd be very great. I was thinking about it actually all week. The last
okay,
2 3 weeks, I've been thinking about this. So yeah,
okay,
very cool.
all right.
Brilliant. We got to
Well,
get to
I
work.
will,
Get to work.
I'll get back in touch with her and I'll see if she can't jump on our Zoom,
That'd be great.
hopefully next week, Tuesday or Thursday next week, or when I return from vacation.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Okay,
Very cool. All
all
right. Well, I
right,
hope I see you again soon.
okay.
I missed you too. Same like with Erica. I miss you guys when you're not here. It's very important.
Okay, well, I'll be in touch on Thursday with a
Okay.
time. We
Okay.
can
So remind me on
definitely,
choosing to believe and having to believe. There's more to it. I want to just elaborate on it.
okay, choosing to believe will be our
And
next
having to believe.
conversation,
Yeah.
and having to believe.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very powerful tools. Very, very, very powerful tools.
perfect.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Having
Brilliant.
to believe. Okay,
Okay.
I
Bye.
leave you to Erica. Erica, have a good session.
Yes.
Bye,
Thank you.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Sil.